All right. Hello, todas. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Carolina, digital organizer with Mijente, pushing through, keeping it pushing, having these conversations as we've been having throughout the day. We've been connecting with compas in Georgia, Florida, Texas, hasta Argentina, and Puerto Rico. So, very, very excited to be here today con Carlos. He is the Southwest Regional Director at the Working Families Party. So, Carlos, te lo paso a ti for a quick little intro, and then we can dive straight into what you're seeing on the ground.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, Caro. Thank you, mi gente, for having these charlas with the gente out there. It's important that we're involved in this huge election, an election that will set the stage for many, many years to come. Again, my name is Carlos Valverde. I'm the Southwest Regional Director for the Working Families Party and for Working Families Power. And I want to just take a quick moment to say a little bit about working families and the work that we're doing. We don't try to hide the ball. We are a non-delusional third party, but that idea of being non-delusional is critical. And in this election cycle, the way that played out is we had a strategy of block and build, of block the white nationalist authoritarianism that is represented by Donald Trump and the MAGA movement, and at the same time, build the party of our dreams by outreaching to Latino communities, to working class and multiracial communities all across the country, and making sure that voice is heard in this election cycle, all the way from small races like city council and school boards to the big races like US Senate and even in the presidential campaign. So that's who Working Family is in a nutshell. And I'm just really happy to be with you all today.
Awesome. Gracias, Carlos. So you shared a lot about, the national work, the national scope that WFP is leading in this moment. I wonder, can you tell us a little bit more about the kind of work that WFP is advancing and pushing forward in Colorado specifically?
Sure. So I am the Southwest Regional Director, and in my region is Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. And I happen to be joining you right now from the battleground state of Arizona. You can see one of the canvassing maps behind me. I just got off the doors in the battleground state of Arizona. I'm feeling optimistically hopeful here. There is a line of probably 1,000 young folks at the university right now, ready to, in line to cast their ballots. I'm feeling really, really good. But I was born and raised in Denver, and I was the first state director of the Colorado chapter of the Working Families Party. So that is very, very close to my heart. I helped get that organization up and going with our amazing organizing committee, state committee, and our staff out there. And it's very, very similar. The one subtle difference is that Colorado is a very, very blue state, has a blue gubernatorial person, the legislature, both chambers are blue. And so we often run in Democratic primaries where we try to get the most working families Democrats elected into office. And so a lot of our fights ended up being there. But when it comes time for the general election, like today, like for this election right now, we are looking at those places in the state, like Southern Colorado and in the San Luis Valley and Pueblo, this historic Chicano homelands. We see the right wing, we see MAGA, we see the Libre Initiative, and these folks going in and investing and trying to turn Latino vote, trying to pull Latinos to be more Republican and vote that way. And so a lot of our biggest campaigns, at least on the candidate side, are happening in those areas. But Colorado is also a ballot measure state, and it has been a ballot measure state for more than 30 years. In fact, one of the longtime ballot measures that we have been working to undo is a ballot measure called TABOR, or the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. And that kind of sounds good, and you can see why a lot of people would have passed this many, many, many years ago, because that sounds like something we would all want. Taxpayer Bill of Rights, that sounds right. But what this ballot measure did was put a stranglehold on our state budget. And this is why in Colorado, in a triple blue state, we still can't fund our education system or our healthcare system or our roads and public infrastructure at the level it needs to be. And it's because of this ballot measure. But because ballot measures have had a long history, in the early days of ballot measures, like Tabor, it was the right wing, it was conservatives who used Colorado as a testing ground for these extreme policies. And back then, 30 years ago, they used these ballot measures because they couldn't pass it. They couldn't pass these extreme measures even through the conservative, it was a Republican legislature at the time. They couldn't pass it there, so they would take it to the ballot and try to pass it there. And so every year, we see ballot measures to limit abortion rights, ballot measures to cut English as a second language education in our schools. And our communities every year have risen up to fight those and have by and large been pretty successful in defeating a lot of those right-wing measures. Our movement, the progressive movement in Colorado, is finally beginning to catch up, and we're beginning to use these ballot measures to get things through that we couldn't get through the legislature. So this really started back in 2006 when we said we need to raise the minimum wage. It was $5.15, and the community came together and we decided to raise the minimum wage. Several years later, we went after payday loans. They were charging 520% interest rates on working class people. And so we decided to go and eliminate that industry and bring those interest rates down. We passed paid family and medical leave for workers. And so our movement has been able to start using these ballot measures for positive and gains in the state of Colorado.
Awesome. Gracias, Carlos. Thank you for laying down that historical context and kind of shedding light on how it is that we got here to this present day. So I want to get into talking about Amendment 79, which would protect, a constitutional right to abortion in Colorado. So how is that measure resonating with the community? How have those conversations been on the ground? And what would that passage mean for reproductive rights in a post-Roe v. Wade country?
This measure is perhaps one of the most essential on the ballot. I'll take one step back, though, and just give you the context of all this. Because Colorado is a ballot measure state, there are 14 ballot measures at the statewide level, including Proposition 79 here, or I'm sorry, Amendment 79. This is an amendment. This would change the Colorado Constitution. So Amendment 79 is one of these 14 statewide ballot measures. I live in Denver. We have an additional 11 ballot measures for the city of Denver. So in total, we have 25 ballot measures that folks in the city of Denver are voting on. Some municipalities have even more than that. So ballot measures are a really common thing for us. Voters are very used to it. Working Families Party, we produce a ballot guide because we get a blue book. I wish I was at my office in Denver because I would show you the blue book. It's about this thick, explaining these ballot measures, and who has the time to read that short novel of all these explanations. So we produce a ballot guide that gives folks in 3 or 4 sentences a summary of what this thing does and how it would affect working class people. Amendment 79 would be a tremendous win for our state. As you mentioned, with the fall of Roe, with the uncertainty of what will happen in other places, in Colorado, we want to make sure we enshrine in our state's constitution the right to an abortion. But it doesn't just stop there. So one of the major challenges a lot of folks face is sometimes their insurance, because it's from the state or because it's from some other kind of entity that doesn't allow for abortion care in the insurance policy. This would also allow for those insurance companies, for the state-run insurance company, to give that right to abortion in those cases. So for us, this is huge. We have been looking at the polls, monitoring how things are going. This is probably one of the biggest campaigns the movement has ever run. I have been hearing from folks on the ground in Colorado that this is looking really, really strong, and we're very hopeful that it'll be passing this year.
Sounds great. Gracias. And, we've seen that throughout the conversations that we've had today. We have a compa, Isabela, at Florida Rising, who is also pushing for the same with their Amendment 4, so the Yes on 4 campaign out there. But turning over now to another important measure, Amendment 80, which would allow public school funds to be redirected to private schools, there's been a lot of debate on that. So why is defeating that specific measure significant for the future of public education in the state of Colorado?
Yeah. Education is one of the last havens of public institutions in our country. We still call it public school, right? This is a public good. We know that when a good public education system is working, we have a thriving economy and we have a thriving democracy. And so we want to ensure that public education always has the funding it needs to be successful and make sure all students have the opportunity for a quality education. What this measure does, though, is allows for public dollars, our tax dollars, to go to private schools. And for us, a lot of these private schools have a faith-based orientation or are designed for wealthy students who can afford to go to these schools. We know that the overwhelming majority of kids of color, they go to public schools, and to take those scarce resources away from the public school and send it to private schools, we know that'll affect the quality of education of our kids in communities of color.
Absolutely, which is why defeating that is so key. So
Exactly.
finally, for those who want to support this work, who are watching, who might not be familiar with the Working Families Party but want to learn more, where can they connect with you and WFP online? And specifically for our folks in Colorado, how can they connect with you on the ground?
Absolutely. So before I answer that part, I want to just spotlight a couple of other ones, because as people are watching Colorado, there were a couple of other really interesting, of those 25, there's a lot of them are very interesting, but there are a couple that I just want to give folks a heads up on, because you might be seeing things in your states as well, and they are tricky, and I want to make sure you're aware of them. Well, the first one is not tricky. We are also looking to enshrine marriage equality in the state of Colorado this year with Amendment J. This would make it so that no matter who is on the Supreme Court, no matter who is the president, people can get married to who they love, regardless of their gender or sexual orientation. And so marriage equality is also on the ballot in Colorado. That's a huge one for the progressive movement in our state. But there's also a tricky one, Proposition 131. This would implement jungle primaries. And a lot of progressives, a lot of progressive-minded people have kind of thought this might be a good idea. But what does this do? This allows for the wealthy, for billionaires, to invest more in our elections, to have more money going into them, and then it dilutes the quality of progressive candidates that we have in the general election. So we're also trying to make sure we defeat that one. Keep your eye out for it. The folks, the billionaires who are backing this, have spent over $18 million to try to convince people these jungle primaries are the way to go. But we're putting up a good campaign, and we're hopefully going to defeat that one. So there's collective bargaining for Denver city employees. There's all kinds of cool stuff on the ballot. There's good and there's bad. We're going to defeat the bad ones. We're going to win the good ones. The way to get involved with Working Families, visit us on our Facebook page, go to our website, workingfamilies.org or workingfamiliespower.org, either organization. You can sign up, get involved. We heavily work on elections, but as soon as this is done, we're going to be beginning that process of what it looks like to govern with the folks that we get elected and under these new laws that we're able to enact. So please join us, stay involved. It doesn't end on election day.
Gracias, Carlos. And thank you for touching on that co-governance piece and how critical it is to hold these folks accountable once we get them in office, because like we all know, they wouldn't be in these positions, these puestos, if it weren't for the gente that make it possible. So gracias, Carlos. Thank you for connecting with us, for sharing space, for sharing all of that great political context. Thank you for your work, for all the work that the compas at WFP are leading. And thank you to everybody who's been tuning in throughout the day, throughout the evening. I know we're all waiting for returns to slowly trickle in. We have one more conversation that we have lined up for today. We're going to be checking in with our compas in Phoenix. Phoenix is actually the location of the last tour stop on the El Chisme tour. For folks who are unaware, we've been, going across the country. We're at like 20 plus stops, just connecting with our gente ahead of the election. And tonight it all ends in Phoenix. So tune into that. We're going to be having a great conversation there. Igual, Carlos, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate you.
Caro, thank you for all the work you do, all the work Mijente is doing all across the country. I heard about what you all are doing in Pennsylvania and all these other battleground states. It's so important. Thank you for all that you are doing.
Gracias, muchísimas gracias.
Con mucho gusto. Nos vemos.